So in the last video, I told you guys basically what happened. We had just found out my mom was dying. There was no questions. I had to sign paper to put her on this comfort care. They gave her back the pain pump. It was just crazy. My husband came in that day, briefly and left to go home and watch my son. My brother got back up to the hospital. The doctor came back in to check up on us and told us that they were going to reserve a private room for my mom. This way, we could all be with her. A couple of days prior to this, and this was so sad, and I didn't tell my mom this, I saw 2 or 3 people die in the time we were in the hospital. The week before my mom died, there was this old woman in her room, and this woman was clearly dying, And for like 3 days, she was just completely by herself. And anytime a nurse would come in the room or touch her, she would flip out and like scream, "Hey, stop that shit," screaming at these people. And it was like really sad to see. My mom just thought she was flipping out for no reason, this lady, but I knew what was going on because I could see this woman. It was very clear that she was dying. And I'll never forget, her sons came up because they had to fly in from out of state. They put them in this room that was actually next door to my mom's room. It was a private room, and it was just her in the room. And I remember walking, down the hallway that night, and I would walk past the room, and the sons were playing music for her, and they were singing to her and comforting her, and then, she finally passed away. There was somebody else in the room that night. So the doctor told me that they should be getting discharged the next day and that they would switch my mom into that room the next day. So I was like, good, because I told them, I'm like, listen, she has a really big family and there's a lot of people up here, So the doctor leaves the room. Oh, all my mom's family starts showing up. Everybody starts coming, all her brothers and sisters, everybody's there, right? And the hardest thing to see was my grandmother. She was like just lost. I would just look at her and start crying immediately. You're not supposed to see your kids die before you. And my heart was just broken because I'm like, this poor woman didn't even know that my mom had cancer. She had no idea. She knew something was wrong with my mom, but she didn't think it was anything serious. Over the years, people have been in the hospital. My aunt had her gallbladder removed. So my grandmother's just thinking it's like nothing. And she's going to go back to normal. And now all of a sudden she comes down, not only finds out that she's dying, but that she has cancer. She looked like shocked. She was in shock. She was just sitting right next to my mom with her hands like this in her lap, looking at her, just going, how did this happen? I didn't even know. Why didn't she tell me? Why didn't anybody tell me? The whole time. That's all she was doing. And I felt so bad. We're sitting there. My brother comes back in the room and he's like, can I talk to you for a second? So I'm like, oh, here we go. She's like, let me talk to you in private. So I'm like, all right, what now? What could you possibly want? I remember we walked down the hallway and we're standing near the elevator and he's like, Satan and I were thinking, since it's almost Thanksgiving. It was the 18th, so it was a couple of days before Thanksgiving, right? And he goes, me and Satan were talking, and Satan thinks it's a good idea if we have the funeral home come up to the hospital so we could start making funeral arrangements. What do you think? I think that's a horrible fucking idea. And he's like, why? And I'm like, because she's still here. And he's like, well, just Thanksgiving's coming. I'm like, who cares that Thanksgiving's coming? He's like, we want to have her at the same one that Dad was at. And I'm like, Steven, we could go to any funeral home. If that one can't accommodate us, there's a million others around. I'm like, I don't think we need to do that. I think it's completely unnecessary. And I'm like, we didn't do that with Daddy's. I'm like, we just called up and told them that, he's on hospice and he might be dying. I'm like, I think that's all you need to do is just make a phone call and just tell them, listen, we just found out that our mom's dying and, we want to make funeral arrangements in the next few days. And that's it. I'm like, I don't think you need the funeral home to come down here. My brother was there when we planned my dad's funeral, so he knows what went into it. You have to go into what I like to call
the showroom of death. You could check out our lovely display of pine boxes that you could lay in for all eternity. And don't worry, if you can't afford one of those, we've got the solution for you. You can stuff your ashes in one of our beautiful decorative vases. And don't worry, we've got flowers for the whole family. Mom, grandma, kids, doesn't matter. Grandpa leave his favorite suit at the dry cleaners? Don't worry, we got you covered. We got suits in all shapes and sizes. Please call now, space is limited.
into the little funeral gift shop where they have all the coffins and all the little things you could buy. I just didn't see how that was going to save us any kind of trouble, because I'm like, we still have to go to the funeral home. We're still gonna have to go there and pick out mass cards and the caskets and all that shit. They can't bring that here. What's the point? And he's like arguing with me. Oh, I mean, Satan's right. It's a good idea. And I'm like, no. Bad idea. Just give them a phone call, right? Whatever. What a fucking asshole. Like, it's all a show. Why do you need to do this? I've never heard of this before in my life. Like, when my dad died, we contacted the funeral home and just told them, like, he's dying any day now. And that's it. That's all you needed to do. There's no need to have the funeral home come here. I didn't even think they would do it, but I was like, whatever. They just want to put on a show like, we care. We've been taking care of everything. But they weren't even at the hospital that whole entire week. I don't know. Whatever. The night's getting older. My husband came up with my son. My mom didn't really talk to him, but she kind of said happy birthday. She was like out of it the whole day though. She didn't really wake up. At one point, I remember sitting in the waiting area. This is so random. Satan left. And I was like, thank God. Thank God. Like, supposedly she went to the doctor. And she comes back and she's like, for whatever reason, brought her paperwork from the doctor in the hospital with her. My aunts are all sitting in the room. It was so awkward. My husband had to leave. Somebody had to watch our son. So I'm like sitting there by myself. I felt totally outnumbered at this point in time. I didn't even want to look at any of my family. I was so fed up with all of them. I'm like, where have you people been? Now you come when she's dying? That's nice. All of a sudden, Satan comes walking in and she has her papers and she's like, I just got back from the doctor. I got an upper respiratory infection. She pulls this thing out of her bag and she's like reading the list. They gave me amoxicillin and Vicodin. My aunts all of a sudden are like, what kind of doctor do you go to? They gave you Vicodin for an upper respiratory infection? She's like, I don't know. That's what they gave me. That's what they gave me. I already have bottles and bottles of it at home. And I'm thinking, like, why do you have bottles and bottles of Vicodins at home? What are you doing? This is not the first time she's made mention of that, like painkillers and shit. How'd she talk the doctor into giving her painkillers for an upper respiratory infection? I never heard of such a thing. So that was one thing. My aunts are sitting in the hospital drinking wine, and I'm like, what the fuck is this? Like, why you people can't just sit up here and not have a party? To me, I didn't think the wine belonged up there, but that's just me. So my Aunt Debbie is supposedly my mom's closest sister, copy and paste. They're so close. She's like talking that night and she's like, I'm gonna sleep up here. I'm not saying she wasn't upset. Everybody was crying that night. Emotions were all over the place. It was really sad. I had already planned on sleeping there. I'm like, I'm not leaving this hospital until she dies, basically. And I'm like, good. I hope she does sleep here because I don't want to be here alone with her in this condition. It's sad. It's scary. Maybe her and I could talk now and mend things tonight. So that was that. So it's getting late at night now, right? And everybody's starting to kind of leave. We're all in the room. Everybody's getting ready to say goodbye. And so people are walking in and out. We were going in the room like maybe 2 or 3 people at a time. So whatever. I'm sitting in the room. My brother was there. My Aunt Betty and her husband. Whatever. People are coming in and out of the room the whole night. My mom had this lady that was in the room that was in her 90s. She went through so many roommates, and some of these old people are fucking nasty. Like, nasty. There was one lady that was like throwing her diapers at the nurses. Like, they're crazy. But this one was actually really nice. She was a really nice lady. I felt bad because I'm like, it's hard enough to sleep in the hospital. Now it's like 11:30 at night and there's people walking in and out from my mom's family, and we're kind of loud. And so I expressed that. I said, oh my God, I feel so bad for this lady, like, because she can't sleep. She's sick too. And I say this out loud. And all of a sudden, and this just shows me who my Aunt Betty actually is as a person. My Aunt Betty, she's sitting on the bed and she turns around and she goes like this. Fuck her. To the old lady sitting in the bed. She puts her middle finger up to the curtain and says, oh, fuck her. And I'm like, I like looked at her and I'm like, holy shit. Holy shit, you completely lack empathy. What if that was my grandmother on that side and she was in the hospital sick and needed to get rest and all these people were keeping her awake? Would you be happy if somebody was just like, oh, fuck her? Wow, that really shows me who you are as a person. It's pretty fucked up, no? Everybody leaves. And I ran home for a minute because I was like, I had my contacts in. I live 5 miles away from the hospital. So I came home. I literally just threw sweatpants on and brought like my toothbrush, packed a couple of things in a bag, and I went back up to the hospital. Everybody had left at this point. My Aunt Debbie was still there, right? And she's like, you know what? I got to take care of my dogs. First, she was saying she was going to sleep there. And now all of a sudden, she's like, I have to get up. I have to let my dogs out and feed my dogs. You're going to leave me here by myself. Thanks. Thanks. And of course, my brother can't stay because, you know, Satan won't allow that. So my brother leaves around 11:30 at night. And I got to tell you guys, my brother's face that day was just like, you could tell he knew he fucked up. He hadn't been there in all week. And I remember just looking at him at one point, like he was just like, that was his face the whole time. When Satan was there with him, I didn't see him cry once. He would just sit there with this blank look on his face. And she's like gabbing it up like nothing's going on, you know? It's just a regular day. Again, no sense of the whole situation and what's going on. She just doesn't have that. So they leave. And now it's me, by myself. Completely by myself. Just got myself all in my pajamas. It's like late at night now. And I'm like, let me, you know, try to go to sleep. They had this like uncomfortable, like old school lazy boy that was broken that like I had to like hold it. Otherwise it would just pop up. I guess I wasn't like heavy enough to hold it in the reclined position. I didn't sleep that whole night. First of all, it's impossible to sleep in the hospital. Every 5 minutes the nurses are coming in and this is going on and something's beeping and this thing's going on and the other woman in the room was like coughing like crazy the whole entire night. I didn't sleep at all. At all. I probably got like maybe fell asleep for an hour that whole entire night. It was just crazy. And it was so scary sitting there with my mom like this, in this condition. And I'll never forget that night of the 18th. My cousin Nico said to me, take this opportunity to talk to your mom and tell her all the things that you want to tell her. It just like kept replaying in my head. And I'm like, I don't know. It's like, just didn't feel right with this other woman in the room, you know? I don't know. Something didn't feel right about it. It was a long night. It was a really long night. I'm going to end this.